Hi, welcome to Chat Communications Happenings and Trends. So today we decided to discuss this topic of campaign financing and campaign donations. So if you're unaware, there's kind of a battle going on within the Democratic Party currently. And the idea, or I guess the forefront of that battle, is against progressives and the more moderate centrist people and candidates. And so the idea, or I guess some of the arguments lobbed at from actual non-progressives from more of the center is, well, who is the real Democrat here? And so that brings up a very important question, because are you still a real Democrat if you do the bidding of more Republican or Libertarian people? And so that's kind of at the heart of our topic today. And so when we look at campaign financing and donations, we see that there are actually a large amount of GOP leaning or libertarian leaning people donating to campaigns. And these are large donations. They're not by any means small. And in some of their instances, they're donating through super PACs as well. So these are more dark money instances that are pretty much unlimited. So one good example of this is Andrew Cuomo, who in, I guess, 2011 received about $80-something thousand from the Koch brothers to run his gubernatorial race or his campaign. And so that does ask the question, are you a Democrat standing for democratic values and democratic morals if you are getting financed by somebody like the Koch brothers, who's a well-known basic donator of GOP right-leaning candidates? These brothers had a big to-do during the Tea Party movement, and they financed a lot of their campaigns. And at the end of the day, these people that were able to get into office did the bidding of the Koch brothers. So there's a good example of this happening with Andrew Cuomo, who then went against some of his campaign promises and basically proposed or did some legislation in New York to hurt workers, to hurt the working class people there. And so we just wanted to kind of have that discussion. Are you still a Democrat if you receive these donations? And because we know there's great studies that have proven that the will of the people is pretty much ignored over lobbyists and the people that have financed these campaigns. And so are you a Democrat if you accept this kind of money? I think that this does point to a very broken system. And so we just wanted to just start the conversation that way. So Janet, I'm going to just throw this question off to you. What's your take?
Well, I mean, the whole thing is like, okay, they say like, oh, we need to take that money because otherwise it would go to the GOP. But what they're not getting is we don't care if they have money. Like we'd rather help them get into office, not taking these donors' money at all, whether they're Democrat or GOP. But when you're going and you're taking GOP money and you're sitting there trying to, fight this fight that the Dems are the better people, but, and on the other hand, like they put out, for a couple of decades now, you can find stories going back of how evil the Koch brothers are. So why are they taking money from evil people? I don't get that. Like that doesn't seem right. Another instance that happened is Heidi Heitkamp, actually, the Koch brothers put out an ad for her. So, I mean, it's not direct money to her, but it's putting out an ad for her, and it's money that she would have spent to put that ad out. So, all these little helper things that the Republicans are doing. And the other question is, and you and I discussed this, is why would the GOP do this? And you can get into that first, and then I'll give mine after.
Well, why the GOP would basically fund these candidates is because they're not Democrats. I mean, again, if you look at the studies, The studies show that the will of people is regularly ignored for donors and lobbyists. So if you have somebody like the Koch brothers that would love for you to basically make it illegal to form a union, and then, well, boom, the governor of New York just made it illegal to form a union. Well, and he was funded by somebody like the Koch brothers that are not pro-worker, they're very pro-business. The more deregulation on businesses, the better. The more pollutants you can put in the environment, the better. And so that's why they fund them, because they know that they can corrupt them, or that not only if they're even corruptible, but maybe that's actually how they believe in the first place. You know how Hillary Clinton had the, my personal view and my private life view? Well, maybe a little bit of money can make that private life view actually more potent and come to the forefront. And then you start writing bills and laws to support that private life view because it happens to support something like what the Koch brothers want. It's very easy to do. And I would argue it's because they aren't the quote unquote real Democrats. Now, there is also an argument to be made that because this has been such a long-term corruption of our democracy, that we don't actually have a Democratic Party to begin with. That they're just Republicans, right-wing Republicans, and maybe Republican-like people in Congress now, because our Democratic Party hasn't been well representing working class people or workers or families, working families for quite some time. I cannot recollect in my memory when the Democrats actually served the people. I don't think I was alive when they actually did that. And I think money in politics was a thing that became more pronounced during maybe the 80s. And it was completely, campaign financing with private industry dollars was basically heavily promoted during Citizens United. And that just blew up the entire democratic system that we once enjoyed, and that was in the 1990s that happened. So I wasn't ever able to vote in a true democracy when money didn't corrupt our politicians to the extent that they do now.
I had like one other thought on it is it is a thing against Trump, because if you look at the donations from, you look at 2014 where it was a in-between year, and then you look at 2016. Of course, there's a lot more money in 2016 because they were giving to Hillary for presidency, but the GOPs that were, giving to her, most of that was going to her. Now in 2018, a lot of these donations, they're given, 50,000 here, 20,000 or 100,000, and but there seems to be a lot more of them in the states, and the donors, the GOP donors that are doing this are mainly from those blue states. They're Massachusetts, there's California, there's a New York, and then there's a big one in Florida too, but that's not a blue state. But I mean, there's one that gives consistently to both sides. Like I feel like they're playing both sides, and I always say that Florida politics are some of the most messed up that we have in the country. But I mean, you can't trust these people. You can't have them saying out of one side of their face, they're saying, oh, you can't trust the GOP and you can't trust their donors and you can't do this, but then they're taking money from them. I mean, even if it's $5,000, it's too much. Like it's just nuts.
Well, I think it's fascinating because even on that same token, it's not only you can't trust the GOP that is financing or helping finance my campaign, but you also can't trust the progressives that aren't taking these big dollar donations, which is nuts, right? I mean, if you look again at the studies, it does show that lobbyists and people that finance the campaigns end up having their will promoted in politics and policy more so than the people. And so if you have a people-funded campaign, you're telling me, Democrats, that's the person I can't trust. That's not that person isn't a real Democrat. I mean, maybe in the system that we have today, because of, again, the corrupting influence money has played, you may be right. They aren't real Democrats because they're not Republican to you. But the real Democrats used to stand for working people. And is it more of a, we need to return to the Democrats, to the working people, or do they, again, need to be their own party? I think we have this discussion a lot because, again, that is a topic of discussion and a hot topic of discussion. And it is crazy. Not to mention, you've got Democrats or Democratic organizations and PACs propping up and financing Republican campaigns. And from what I understand, or what I've seen as of late, this has been used to basically prop up pretty terrible candidates like John Blankenship in West Virginia. There was reports that a Democratic super PAC helped finance his adverts and advertisements. And I think they helped fund one of his television commercials so that he could get out his message of terribleness. I mean, he went to prison not for very long for a mining accident he was responsible for. And so you have that. So I don't think that these Republican PACs and individuals like the Koch brothers are doing the same thing to promote a candidate that a Republican can then beat, because these are people like Andrew Cuomo who will do the bidding of them over the people, and it doesn't seem to be in a way to face off another candidate. Now, I'm sure Koch brothers were smart and they gave both people funding during that race, both the GOP candidate and the Democratic candidate. If I had money and that's who I wanted to be, that would make sensitive for me on my end. But again, does that make that candidate that you are funding a Democrat or Republican? Or maybe, just maybe, they're like the same.
Okay. Am I still buzzing, guys? Because I turned it down a little bit, and I'm hoping that it's a little bit better. I know that we're on a delay, but so anyhow, yeah, going off of what you were saying, like, it's, I mean, it's nuts that like it doesn't seem like they care that they I'm sorry, I'm like losing my thought right now because I was playing with my mic, but it doesn't seem like they care that they look like GOP or that they even support GOP policies. They just don't care. That's how I'm looking at that. And it's like they're just bullying the people. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you're progressive and you want the people to pay for these things. These things cost a lot of money. They don't need to cost as much money as they do. These things cost a lot of money. We need to take this money from the big donors. We didn't have this prior to the 90s is when it really started getting bad. So we don't need that. So I mean, it's just, Amanda left her desk now, so I'm going to have to keep talking, and I have nothing else to say. Sorry. Oh, she's back. But so it just, I mean, it's just crazy to think. I don't understand what they're thinking or what they're getting at or how they point fingers back at the GOP if they're going to take GOP money. I don't get that.
Because it's by design, right? They're pretending like there's some sort of opposition party. And the GOP is probably doing the same thing in return. I don't know if any GOP person or voter thinks the Koch brothers are super liberal. I don't think that they're under that impression that they are. But I mean, it could be, hey, the Koch brothers are funding your candidate, your opposition candidate. What's up with that? I mean, I don't know if that side of the aisle has those questions. I know that ours does, and that we fight about that shit all the time. But honestly, I have no idea if that side of the aisle has even thought about that or even views campaign financing as a problem, because we do need public financing of campaigns. We got to get private interests out of elections and out of policy, because it doesn't work. It doesn't. No wonder people don't feel a part of the political process. And this is both Democrats and Republicans and everybody in between. I mean, our voter participation rate in the United States is one of the poorest among westernized developed nations. And there's no surprise. We have one of the worst campaign finance systems because of the private interests that are involved. And believe me, there are a lot of private interests in other systems as well. It's just ours is actually the most corrosive because ours is essentially unlimited. These are things that are basically wouldn't even be a thought in people's heads in some other countries. They would be like, of course we have publicly financed elections, because we know that if 100% privately financed elections are problematic, because they no longer serve the people. Why is this such a why? Okay, so they've created the false dichotomy of them having, an opposition candidate or an opposition party, when there really isn't an opposition party. They work together, intentionally so. They are funded together by the same person. And it's no surprise that, our hands were conveniently tied when it came to trying to get single payer legislation passed. But we were able to get a big, giant handout for the corporations, for the insurance companies and their CEOs, when we made everybody have to pay insurance or face a penalty. But it was private insurance. You couldn't enter a public market because we didn't make a public market. So not everybody, but some people on the right believed that that was a public option. And no, the reason why your insurance rates continue to skyrocket is because the private industry controls that. There were no cost controls placed on the private market because they paid for that. They paid for it both on the Democratic and the Republican side. And so we have no party that serves our interests on the ground. What we need health care, we need clean water, we need a safe and free internet, a functioning internet. Everybody should have that, and it shouldn't be a big private company give out just for them to lay down some lines that they own, and then they'll pay their customers for, when we could easily provide the internet as a public service for the public good. But we don't think about that. It's our brains in America. We have to think or start promoting this idea of expecting better from our government and expecting that the private industry doesn't have the interest of the people at heart. You see this in the media, you see this in healthcare, and the private industry, it's a private coup of our government because now they own the politicians.
All right. So I wanted to just add too, is that there's probably way too many people in this country that doesn't understand where this money is coming from and who's accepting this money, because a lot of people in this country are complacent and they don't pay attention to this stuff. And I know politics is hard, and they make it that hard, and they make it difficult to understand it. And they love doing the MSM and having Fox and CNN against each other, MSNBC. They love giving this false information on two different fronts so that people don't get it. But I also wanted to bring up Bluebell has asked, how do you feel about mandatory voting? Personally, as I don't like it, because I think people should have the freedom whether they want to vote or not. I don't know, that's just personally. I don't know how you feel, Amanda.
I am definitely within that same camp. I think that if you make everybody responsible for voting, when we come up to a candidate where it's the lesser of two evils, right? And you haven't given them any option, anybody to vote for, I think a protest vote of not voting is a vote, to be perfectly honest. Now, what I really wish that they would do if they want to really increase voter participation, which they don't, but if they did, they need to make it a voter holiday. That way, people can be off from work to vote so that they don't have to worry about, juggling a lot of things like being back at the workplace or figuring out how they can request off to be back at the workplace, trying to figure out who's going to take care of their children and all of these things so that they can go and do their public duty as voting. Now, I think doing mandatory votes would, honestly, I don't think that's a very good idea.
Well, I think in my view, it should be automatic. Like you automatically get signed up to vote. Do you know what I mean? Like so that you don't have to worry about, going like once you turn 18, you can vote in the election. You know what I mean? Like it's just automatic there, or same day signing up to vote. And like you said, a voter holiday would help like 90% of the workers. You still have the workers that have to work holidays and stuff like that, but it would help a lot more people get and I mean, like Tuesday's a weird day to do it on anyways. Like you would have thought that maybe they would do it on a weekend or something, but we do all our votings are like Tuesdays, and it's just weird. Or give people half days or something like that. I mean, there has to be something to get people out there to vote, but also get people more interested and also understand more what's really in their best interest, not sitting there fighting with people that put down billionaires. I mean, who are you helping? Fighting a person that says a billionaire could actually, take us out of poverty. I read something today that all the billionaires, all the extra money that they have, like 7 times over, could take care of poverty in the whole world right now. That's how much money they have.
Yeah, it's really a failure of the system, I think, to have so few with so many, yet so many with so little. As Aaron A. said, advertise the holiday as Christmas for democracy. I think that's a really good idea. I'm again against mandatory voting, but I think again having a holiday is important. Janet, you're right. Tuesday is a weird day, and I don't remember where I read this, and so don't take this with a grain of salt because I'm having to recollect this from memory. But I was reading somewhere that Tuesday was an intentional day that they selected to hold elections because they knew that Tuesday isn't a good day. And they don't, which is weird. America is supposed to be like, oh, the beacon of democracy, the light upon the hill and shit like that. But for a very long time, they've gone through active measures to help suppress votes, whether it's putting your elections on or holding your elections on Tuesday, or through having to be able to, in order to be eligible to vote, to basically have registered to vote 2-3 months in advance for any election. And this is, again, corrosive to democracy, and many other modernized countries that would be on par with the United States, they don't do this to their citizens. They hold elections on weekends or have an election holiday if it isn't on a weekend. They have the automatic voter registration when somebody turns 18, and so they make sure that not only are they registered to vote, but they also are registered to be in the service if a draft is called. And so it would make sense for them to, in the United States, to do these things because we have seen that they do actually increase voter participation. There was a country, I don't remember which one, but it was one of our previous allies. I don't know. They're still allies, of course. But they were having an issue with voter participation, just like we have in the States. Yet they went through active measures to change that, such as the two that we mentioned. And it's helped increase voter participation. I think now they're at like 60 to 70%. And we're here, trying to spread democracy, but our voter participation is at 40% at best. And it's not because of the people. They feel disenfranchised from the system, but they don't have the freedom to do votes, to go vote, because they're stuck at work, and not to mention they didn't get a candidate that spoke to them. And so why would they waste their time when they feel so far removed from the system? Like, nobody's going to listen to them.
They actually claim that they picked Tuesday in 1845 because of the Sabbath and farmers having to keep the Sabbath, and that they might need a whole day to travel to vote. I don't know why there wasn't something closer to them, but that's the claim. But that was 1845. That was 150 years ago, 60, so whatever years. I can't do math right now in my head. Sorry. But like, no, we could have changed that at any time before this. And so, yeah, no, they're keeping Tuesday because they know it's a hard day. It's a hard day to get, off and do things because it's midweek. And I don't know. I think they totally can make the changes. And I don't know. It just feels like it's just bullshit to use the whole thing as, oh, well, this was tradition. This is what we did. It doesn't make sense. Like, they need to make a lot of changes, and these changes can be made fairly easily.
Well, here's another thing that goes to the fact that you don't have a real dual party system, right? A real system that's interested in representing people over corporations. So when more people vote, Democrats win because the country leans left on a lot of issues. There's a big voting bloc coming to full age in 2020. The millennials are one of the largest voting blocs, yet none of the Democrats, at least on a federal level, I keep hitting this thing. None of the Democrats on the federal level have proposed voting holidays, automatic voter registrations, that would actually help increase voting participation, which would assure, in many cases, a Democratic victory. So you can tell just based off of that alone that they're really not invested in or interested in fixing the system. They hold too much power. They have a lot of money. Some of these corporations and big donors have given them nice little stocks, and so they have a lot of, so their interests are very much in line with corporations and very rich individuals. And so to me, that's very telling to where the Democratic Party is and why they would want to ensure that people that don't take individual donations are even given a platform. So who does the media cover? Does the media cover these people that are promoting, grassroots activism, that are basically saying none of my campaign dollars are coming from large super PACs or anything along those lines? No, fuck no. The media was all over people like Dianne Feinstein. And yeah, she actually has some contenders in the race that have promised not to take super PAC donations. Yet here Dianne Feinstein's getting all the media coverage, and she absolutely takes that stuff. It's ridiculous.
The other thing that that would help a lot is the ranked voting. I do like that. I think that would help third parties a lot, and that's why it will never happen under our duopoly. So, but we need to as a people, we need to make other people understand that, all this stuff is against their interests. And I know people get sick. I don't want to talk about politics. Or when you talk about like, I don't know, I think you mentioned like a week ago, you said, oh, maybe we should start earlier. But I know so many people that I don't want to look at politics. I don't want to look at the ads. I don't want to see that. And what they should be doing is, why aren't the Dems going out and exciting these people to vote? You know what I mean? Like, that's what Bernie did for us. So, like, why aren't the Dems doing more and getting people more involved and all that stuff? I don't get it.
I mean, I think that the Dems aren't doing more. It's because they want to hold their position of power. Because once they start doing more and activating their base, well, their base is very progressive in nature. So they would expect certain changes of the party to basically support worker rights, to support unionization, support raising the minimum wage, support universal health care, which is still not on the platform for them, by the way. So you've got a largely progressive base and a Democratic Party that wants nothing to do with that base for good reason, because they are getting the money, and the money's very nice and it's very good and it's comfortable. And they're basically assuring some sort of monarchy, if you will, in politics based off of region, and then the monarchy goes together to make decisions on behalf of the corporations. So it's running like an oligarchy. It's just, I mean, I just don't see how this country can even say it's democratic anymore. I really don't, because I mean, this is basically what you see in like these fake vote countries, like the type of voting participation in these like faux vote countries that are more, more of a monarchy. If they even hold elections, right? They suppress people's votes. They make sure it's inconvenient. And these people are getting poorer and poorer and more destitute, which is what is happening to this country. And that is not a democracy.
I had a good conversation with my mother the other day. She doesn't like talking politics all the time, but she'll, she flips through the channels and watches The View and watches, she'll be 80 next month. So she, even when I was telling her, I go, well, Mom, this is why, because she said to me, oh, there's way too many, they're saying that there's way too many Dems. She wasn't saying it. They were saying it on the TV, on MSM and these talk shows that she watches. And I said, Mom, you understand why this is, you know what I mean? And we sat down and we talked about it, and she's like, yeah. She even said she's been a Democrat her whole life. And she's like, yeah, they don't represent things that I believe in anymore. They don't at all. And this is a woman who's still, involved in the Catholic Church and stuff. So, I mean, for her to say that's pretty big.
I'm reading a comment now from Big G Haywood. That the Democrats aren't there to further any of the policies and ideas that would help the people. They're there to get paid and further the right-wing agenda of their donors, which again feeds back to the narrative that their donors are paying them intentionally so that they promote right-wing policies. So they aren't Democrats. I mean, this whole debate about who's the real Democrat, is it progressives or is it these corporate centrist Democrats? There's no even debate about what the Democratic Party was supposed to stand for. So the progressives would actually be the real Democrats. But as it exists today, the Democrats are the real Democrats, those centrist corporatists, right? Because I guess as the right wing has shifted more and more, the Democratic Party has shifted. And again, this was a problem that happened in the Clinton era. Again, something that Clinton has helped do. And it has destroyed a real opposition party, a real party that could be on could be serving the people. I mean, if you had somebody like, Bernie Sanders, and then you had a whole Democratic Party of Bernie Sanders and even more progressives, because it never stops at Bernie Sanders, right? I can't imagine them losing an election, truly, because people need those things. They need those essential services that Bernie Sanders is promoting, like universal health care. That's something that everybody should have in this country. Nobody should die or go bankrupt because they cannot afford a treatable condition, let alone a chronic condition. And nobody should have to go through that. And if we are a humane people, we understand that. And 60% plus of the country understands that. And I have to keep saying, if we lived in a democracy, we would have it by now, but we don't. And part of that is because, yes, there has been a right-wing takeover of both parties. Just some is a little, I guess, less right-wing. That I would call them, more of a, faux libertarian party. They're better on social issues, not so much on the financial stuff, which is kind of what I guess layman libertarians call themselves. They're like, whatever you want to do social. In fact, I would say that the people that I know that are libertarians, they're probably more progressive on social issues than the Democratic Party is. Because these are also the same people that are like, yeah, deregulate, like stop, not deregulate everything, but let's decriminalize everything, make everything legal. So if people want to do drugs, let them do drugs. Fund rehabilitation centers, but don't let the prison industry keep getting money from that. Fund or decriminalize prostitution, so that if somebody wants to partake and enjoy in that industry, let them do so. And then let that be if somebody has a coupling of some sort where somebody has sought a prostitute and has cheated on their partner, that's between them. That's not between society. So I would say that some libertarians are probably pretty better on some social issues than the actual Democratic Party is. But the Democrats. I mean, it's constant. Like for me, I had been a Democrat for a long time. I mean, for my age, right? And I just feel like every day it's another little stab in the back, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, we're not really interested in minority communities. Stab in the back. We're not going to do anything to help them who have lost the majority of their wealth under Barack Obama and has lost and is projected to be at a negative wealth standing in just about 10 years if things continue to go the way that they do. But you're going to tell me the Democratic Party is there to be the voice of minorities. Bullshit. I mean, it's such bullshit, because if they were, they would help them and actively do so. But instead, what do? Sign, things like the criminal bill that Hillary Clinton signed, or keep approving of private prisons and private industries. Well, I mean, what's that senator? I'm going to give him credit, but I don't remember his name. He went to an ICE detention center, one that was as dedicated for children, and he actually called ahead of time and said he was going to tour the facility. And when he got there, they wouldn't let him in. And so he was trying to, I guess, bring awareness to the fact that, we've got internment camps and potentially concentration camps in the United States right now. And it's our immigration camps, because that's where they go to die. That's where immigrants get detained indefinitely. And that's where immigrants work slave labor. And there's been many very buried reports about this, and even in traditional, like, corporatist media circles, there's been reports about this. But I don't really see a big outcry on the Democratic Party, because that's another little fucking stab in the back that they have for us.
It was Markley that got turned away, by the way. But I want to go back to an old point that you were making, and talking about Bernie and progressive. And I mean, and Bluebell was totally in my head, because I was thinking the same thing. That, I mean, look back at FDR and how people he had to use term limits because people wanted to keep voting for him because he did these progressive things. And we need that again. We're at a state in our country that we need that. I mean, there are times like, yeah, maybe capitalism did a little bit of good for a time. It's not time for capitalism anymore because we see what we've seen what it does. I mean, it's destroyed a lot of this world, and we need to go on and think about these things a little bit differently. And we need these progressives, and we can't do this anymore. We just can't. It's like every day it just seems to be something else that they're moving us right, moving us, giving the corporations everything they want, and just not even addressing the issues that we bring up. Like, not even like when we say we don't want you to take money, it's like, oh, you're just children. You don't understand politics. You don't understand that we need to take this money. Like that's how they treat us. And they're going to always treat us because they're going to keep kicking us out of the politics. They're never going to let a third party get strong enough. They just never are. And it's our job to make this happen, to break this duopoly. And as a people, we need to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, again, going back to the justification for why they take money is because they need to take the money. That's a fucking weird justification. You need to take the money, so therefore you take the money. I mean, how circular is that, right? That's really not a justification, because if you were to move to a different financing system, such as a public campaign financing system to help reform our current campaign finance laws, then we wouldn't even be really talking about the money in politics issue. But we have to have this conversation because, again, we have a capitalist system that supports and promotes the person with the most money. And in a capitalist system with the person with the most money, they have the most influence. So when we opened up the floodgates to our campaign financing laws, basically said it's unlimited in the form of PAC money, that it can be untraceable. You can now, people with the most money have the most influence. And so again, it's part of the corrosiveness of capitalism, because now the people with the most money get the say in our democracy, in our supposed democracy. And what would they do? They want to make it anti-democratic, because capitalism is inherently counter to democracy, at least in the United States it is, because we have no we have very small regulation on some of these industries and people, and especially on campaign financing. And so, yeah, it is counter to the democratic process in its current state. And I'm sure there's a lot of people I'm going to say that they're the right, but they're within the Democratic Party that will disagree with me. Because again, I'm a child that doesn't know anything, that doesn't understand how our campaign finance laws are, how as an individual, you have a mandatory maximum, and that mandatory maximum isn't technically that much, but I don't have that much money to do the mandatory maximum, but what else? I'm going to have to agree to disagree with you, because I see a system for what it is. It's corrosive. It has left too many people behind. We have a very wealthy nation that should be taking care of its most vulnerable people, that isn't, and is intentionally failing to do so.
All right. Well, I want to just add some information about our show. Like we're gonna start doing phone calls. I think it's gonna be in like 2 weeks. We got Lauren to help us, and so she'll start coming on and helping us to answer the phones and stuff like that. It's not that we don't trust you guys, but we don't want any wacky phone calls coming in. So we need to have a third person to handle that. So we should, in the next 2 weeks, we should be up and running with that. So that'll be a good add-in. Do you have anything else, Amanda?
Yeah, y'all need to subscribe to our channel if you aren't already subscribed to our channel. And please consider making a small monthly donation of about $1 to our Patreon page, because that does really support our work here and what we do. Because again, we are trying to put and do a little bit some different things to have you guys have a voice on our show, so that you can call in and talk to us about policy and all these great things, and not so great things, I guess, about politics. So any little bit will really help.
All right. So I don't know, is there anything else on anyone? All right. I think we're good. You ready to say goodbye, Amanda? You guys ready for us to say goodbye? Well, you're not gonna know because you're on a delay, so we're just gonna say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.